Boston, Massachusetts. I've been affiliated with ACI for a very long time now. In addition to having the great privilege of working with Youth United Artists, I have worked with ACI for a long time. I was the 2015 to 2016 Artist in Residence, International Artist in Residence. I had the opportunity through ACI to live and work in Nigeria, specifically Osogbo and Ogidi-Jumu, studying traditional weaving and dyeing. And because of ACI, that has had an amazing impact on my artwork, and I'm able to come back and work with my community, teaching these to my community in Boston. So I'm very thankful for ACI for the work that they do and the impact they've had in my life. So, next up, to begin our closing keynote, we have Julia Ryan from the Mayor's Office of Art and Culture.
How's everyone doing? Great. Wonderful. I'm going to stand over here just so I can put this down, okay? First off, I want to thank you all. I want to thank you all so much for coming today to this amazing summit. My name is Julia Ryan. I work for the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture in Boston, and I work with our Artist Resource Manager. So I basically focus on ways to best support local Boston-based artists from a city perspective, and I try to really work sincerely as an advocate for local artists, helping the city respond to their needs so that they can stay here and live successfully. So thank you so much for having me. It's a wonderful job. I'm really moved by it. I grew up in Jamaica Plain, and I grew up with a lot of wonderful opportunities to be exposed to art and to arts learning. I come from a poor background. My parents grew up in public housing in Boston and in Lowell. They didn't have access to arts opportunities like I did, and they really made that something that's really important for me and my siblings growing up in JP. And I think for me that's really helped me kind of follow this route of giving back to Boston, giving back to the arts, and trying to make sure it's a city that can always allow young people, adults, artists, arts enthusiasts to really thrive here and to really benefit from this wonderful opportunity to be a human and be a human who can make art and appreciate art. So I do want to say I think it's so exciting that we're all here today. I think we all owe a big round of applause to Arts Connect International. This is a historic summit in Boston. We are Bostonians here. We are people from around the country here. We are people from different art forms. We are all putting our heads together to think about how we can do this work more equitably. We're all learning and growing together. I know I'm really, really grateful for ACI, for their team, for their arts leaders, for their artist leaders who are helping us learn and who we can also learn with. And so I'm really grateful for that today. I have a few notes, if you'll bear with me. So I am also so excited to see so many partners come together for this event today. I've looked around the room and I've seen so many different arts institutions. I've seen funders. I've seen artists that I've had the honor to work with. I've seen art service organizations, arts collective, dance groups, etc. And it's so exciting to see everyone in the same room. And I think that, having this space, it's incredible. This is the first time this has happened here in Boston, right? That this is a first ever Arts Equity Summit. It doesn't feel that way because people are so engaged and it's so, passionate, and I think it feels as if we're all really excited to have this conversation, and I really hope, we can continue to have it in years to come. The city of Boston, a few years ago, published a cultural plan called Boston Creates, which is a 10-year plan to, in many ways, create a city where the arts can really thrive and where artists can thrive and where everyone can have access to arts opportunities. One of our goals at Boston Creates was to we heard from the public that we really needed to do a better job at thinking about equity in the arts And that was something that not only we should be thinking about through our cultural plan, but we should be thinking about and planning for through policy and programming and funding through the city. And so one of our goals of our plan is to cultivate a city where all cultural traditions are expressed, are able to be expressed, are represented, are promoted, and are equitably resourced, and where everyone has opportunities to engage with arts and culture in a way that's accessible in a holistic way. So we are working really hard toward this goal. We are a few years into working on our cultural plan and putting it into action, and there's a few ways we've been doing this. One of them is through our Artists in Residence program, which we have had the privilege of funding for the past 3 years, and we plan to continue doing so. This program has allowed local artists to embed themselves in city departments, in spaces where you might not historically expect an artist, anywhere from the police department to all of our community centers throughout the city, to different departments that do permitting and the nitty-gritty of licensure and stuff like that. Artists to really help the city think about ways that we can creatively improve our programs, and also how we can do a better job using social practice art to build community engagement and build relationships. So that's something that we're really excited to continue doing. Another thing that we have been working on recently is we created a new award for our arts and cultural organizational grant that we annually make available for local arts and cultural organizations to apply for, which is a grant to help fund all of the wonderful work that they're doing in Boston. We recently created an award to specifically highlight organizations that are really examples and leaders, models of what an equitable organization should be, from their hiring practices to their programming to the ways that they fund artists, to kind of any way that they are doing their work in a radical and different way and are really honoring equity in our city. And I'm so excited to say that one of those 3 awardees for this new award was Arts Connect International, so another round of applause. This summit is one of the many examples of the ways that they're doing that work, and they're really leading the charge, and that we can learn from them. I'm so proud of that work. I'm so proud to continue working for an institution where we are prioritizing putting money in the hands of artists and arts organizations throughout our city. We will continue to do that, and we're excited to continue doing that. And anytime you want to encourage us to continue doing that, I'm happy to have you reach out and to hear from you and hear from different communities throughout the city about what it is that we really should be working on. I highly encourage everyone to check out the cultural plan if you haven't had an opportunity to really hold us accountable to it. I think that that's a really important part of it. And we really just hope that you'll be our partner in implementing it going forward. So thank you all so much for having us. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you all for being here and for learning together. And I'm so excited to introduce 4 poets. So 4 poets will be sharing their work with us today. So the first poet we have is Ny'lasia. Amazing poet from Dorchester, who's going to be sharing work today with us.
Even Birds Have Beyer is one of my favorite pieces. It's one of my best work, and I take a lot of pride in it. And a lot of people can forgive me by myself. You got this. When you look at me, what do you see? You probably see the black in me. You probably don't see my divinity. You probably see something I'm not trying to be. Not trying to rewind back to black history. You probably see a lotus branch hanging on that populist tree. Populist Negro. Or perhaps you just don't see my wings. But the problem is that I'm trying and I'm crying because I can't see, I can't believe, and I can't achieve. As I get older, I shouldn't be getting smoldered. I should be getting faster, stronger, higher, and closer. But I can't. I can't and I want to. I can't and I want you. I want you to see that there is something more to me. Here I am, as delicate as I can be. And my cotton fields are roses out of the concrete. I want you to set me free like Maya Angelou did with her caged bird. A bird's tune can never be heard if you pluck its feathers. A caged bird can never be heard if you control the weather. Stop taking advantage of me. Stop taking, that's Taking. Stop torturing me, stop torturing me, stop planting your hopes and your dreams in me. You're giving me way too much responsibility. I'm just 16. Can't you see? Can't you see what you've done to me? I'm only 16, but I'm writing like I'm 23. Sometimes I feel like my mind is older than me, like my mind is growner than me, like my mind took my sight from me. You turned me into an old soul. An old soul cannot be phoenix, cannot rise from the ashes. And now my mind is my eyes, I'm blind, and now I can't see. Now I can't preach, and now I can't see. Look what you've done to this legendary bird, reduced to its eggshells, whose chirps are fractured and will never be heard. Now excuse me, while my mind programs me to think, and please do not disturb.
My name is Tamiko Beyer. I'm a poet. I live in Dorchester. And I'm really thrilled and honored to be part of this amazing event. Thank you again to Mary and Cuyler Brown for inviting me and for all of the staff who made this amazing event possible. I'm sure many of you know how much work it takes to put on an event like this. So let's give it up for us. And thank you to all of you. I feel like this day has been really healing and regenerative for me, and you all are very beautiful, and I look forward to having more conversations with you all. And then I just wanted to honor and thank the amazing poets, Ny'lasia.
Yes.
That was amazing, and then I'm looking forward to hearing Paine the poet and Ali's work tonight. So I'm just going to read a few poems. I'm going to turn the timer on so I don't go overboard. They're all from my newest collection, which just got accepted for publication by Alice James Books. And this one is called The Flood. So I think you all know we're in some need of some major revolution. And every revolution needs its poets and its dancers and musicians and artists to keep us all connected to our humanity. To keep us inspired and to also do the work of healing and envisioning, which is, I think, what's happening today. So this poem is in that spirit, and it's a speculative poem. It's called The Flood. In the theater of the former Capitol, dancers and musicians swept bullets and rotten wood off the stage. On the night of the performance, their costumes fluttered, ragged in the updrift. Rigged lights flickered like intermittent bird calls, then steady. The audience breathed, a single taut animal. At the curtain's rise, the hard knot in every one of our throats burst, caught fire, became a wail. The dancers raised their arms in unison. A slow procession of tears flowed from our eyes to chin to laps. The drummers drummed. Our tears pooled on the floor, lapped at our ankles. Wind and string instruments winged through bullet holes and hunger. When we all finally swallowed the last note, the theater was a salty lake. Folding chairs became boats on which we floated out into the night, our bodies strangely light, mirrors to the stars in the cloudless sky, wings unfurling on our backs. This one is called, this one is a pantoum, which is a form of poetry that originated in Malaysia, and the lines repeat in a particular pattern, and they kind of circle back on themselves, which is how I think social change happens, right? It's not a straight linear line, as we all know. It kind of is iterative. So this is called correct pronunciation. Citizens of now, show your papers. Proof of employment, home address, full name. The raised seal textured under your fingertips, bristled past into America. Proof of employment, home address, full name. Terror roars as a white hand at the ballot box. Slits are cast into American complacency. This reckoning, a bruised peach, a soft spot turning terror. A white hand at the ballot box, a trick. It will take the rest of our lives, this reckoning. Eat the peach, cut the soft spot out. Take your power back, a trick that will take the rest of our lives. Scale walls of metal and cement, taking your power back. We gather like water, waves slapping walls of metal and cement, no edges but constant motion. We gather like water, waves wearing away stone, edges with constant motion, the work of undoing, wearing away stone, making space for our names. The work of undoing all the ways we've been mispronounced, our full names, taking up space so that citizen flames like paper. So in 2016, I was invited by the poet Harris to take part in what she was calling an experiment in joy. And the weeks that I was doing it, the cops killed Alton Sterling and Philando Castile. So it wasn't so joyful. And I wasn't really sure what to do with this experiment, and I've been working on it for about 3 years now. So I think it might be close to done, so I'm going to share it with you. It's called Experiment in Revolution. Between structural change and my planted body, an exploded box. Our arms linked the whole way home. Fireworks, a new name then, to my mouth again. Her name, theirs, race, the twisted rope, Sandra Glenn. Time a trigger, Alton Sterling, justice throttled, Philando Castile. So we're living in each other's hands. Impossible to deadhead roses. For all of us, this instant, no law sound to carry, steady July sun, catch the backbeat, home bodies breaking across freeways, breaking the starless night, showing up with your salt on my lips, call it like it is, queer and drenched with color, in blood. Our muscles are spears, our voices sirens, our torsos drums. A large experiment in bodily revolution. Joy, come get me. And I have 2 more poems. The last one's super short. This one's called Root and Rise. I wrote it this summer when U.S. soldiers were taking away babies from their parents' arms at the U.S.-Mexican border. And as a Japanese-American woman whose relatives were incarcerated during World War II, I wrote this poem as a way to kind of work through my agency, my responsibilities, and the actions we need to take. So, root and rise. I am descended from immigrants and internees, laborers and settlers. Seeds break through loose soil at the U.S. border. Babies wrenched from parents by men whose paychecks I write, laying in rows of cots I bought. We were 12 in a barrack. We were the nails pounded down anyway. We were abandoned in the winter desert where the wind was sand and the gray mountains immobile as the sun rose over them and the moon set behind direction from where we came. Seeds root with light. A child wakes 2:30 a.m. screaming in one prison, her mother in another. No mountains, no flights. We were 50 in a barrack. We were children under the eye of a bayonet. We were starved in moonlight, and we made dresses from newspapers, and we began to disintegrate. And as we began to disintegrate, we began to burn, and in the screaming, a bird rose into the night to meet the moon, broad-winged and bloody. Pour me my arrow, moon. Let us find our way. And I'll just end with this short poem. I vow to be the small flame. My people, we have found too shallow our roots in this land full of boulders we inherited. But when the satellites fall, I vow to use my good sense of direction to find you. Songs make provisions. I vow all the spells to turn our capillaries into branches, sea, waving sky. We will not be undone. To the end, I vow to keep our fire lit until we find our free. Thank you so much.
Hi, Mom and Dad, I know you're watching the live stream. So I usually write really sad poems, but I don't want to read sad poems today because I've just been thinking a lot about how, as queer people of color, queer artists of color, we are often given, our pain and trauma is published in given platforms, but our joy is not. People aren't interested in our joy. So I just want to make space for my joy. I'm so full three little baby poems. This first one is a love story between me and the universe. I am so powerful, I can't even contain my own magnificence. It spills out of me no matter how hard I try to control it. The universe sees me and swells with anticipation of what I might become. The universe looks at me and whispers, "You are so full of potential." A man looks me up and down and wonders how he can split me into pieces, make me smaller, but my body has never learned how to kneel before any man. Some days, I am so holy that my body threatens to break beneath the weight of its own brilliance. I do not apologize for my abundance. When the world ends, it will sing my name with its dying breath. When the world ends, I will devour its undoing. So large, so magnificent, so full of potential. Okay, so. This next poem is also, it's just like a love poem, love for my family, friends, community, everybody. My grandmother, who does not speak English, tells me she loves me by making me a cup of instant coffee every morning. Not the gross powdered stuff you find in desolate grocery store aisles 10 minutes before closing time, but the good stuff. Real Indonesian coffee that invigorates you with a jolt of electricity in every sip. It becomes our wordless ritual. I get up at 6 a.m., enter the kitchen with my bedhead and my jet lag, and my grandmother, already awake for several hours, has a pot of coffee waiting on the counter. I pour her a cup, pour myself a cup, and we sit. The curls of steam that rise off of the scalding hot coffee saying everything that we cannot. When I return to the United States, I bring back an industrial-sized bag of Indonesian coffee, and this becomes my new ritual. Every morning, I boil the water, pour the coffee into my travel mug, and sip it slowly on the train, letting it warm me like my grandmother's hug as she bid me farewell at the Surabaya airport. When I tell you that our love is like instant coffee, this is what I mean. Wordless intimacy, comfort, a feeling of home that rises like steam from a coffee cup whenever we touch. There's God in this instant coffee, and my grandmother's kitchen is a house of worship. There's God in my love for you, and our bodies are a house of worship. What I'm trying to say is, I've made you this cup of coffee. Here, take a sip. $2 chuck. Oh, luscious organic fruits and vegetables untainted by pesticides. We sing your praises, your humble disciples, as you bless our outstretched palms with bargains. I want for nothing within your walls. I kneel to you, the hipster's God, and ask for whatever abundance you choose to bestow. In your vast temple, there is no place more sacred than my thirst. At just $2.49, the orange peach mango juice is a modest luxury. The top of the carton reads, "Go ahead and taste the goodness." And how can I resist this divine invitation? Like Eve in paradise, I too have been seduced by the promise of goodness, of sweetness, of quenching my thirst with holy nectar. I place the carton in my basket like a mother lays her child in the crib. Oh, Trader Joe's, I vow not to waste a single drop. Thank you.
Peace, how y'all doing? All right. My name is Paine the poet. I'm out the Washington, D.C. area. Shout out Washington, D.C. I'm a formerly incarcerated artist. I did 8 years in the Virginia penitentiary system. Since then, I've been on national TV a couple times, and the every word that I write is the thought that the guys that I was just in the pod with, the guys that I was sharing the cells with, could see me on TV, and I told them we could do something different. I told them we could be more than what they labeled us. I told them we could live life. So I get chances to go back to the penitentiary and speak as I do things like I'm doing here today, and it just wells my heart up with joy to look at them in the face and say, I told you. You know, I was going to show them. So I'm going to do a couple poems for you guys today. The first one's called Please Don't Judge Us. And it's just a look at people that grew up differently than some of you have. Some of you have grown up like this and can relate to some of the details in this, so just vibe with me. Please don't judge us. No. You see, a lot of us were the victims of the ones that love us. See, some of us had wayward fathers and undereducated mothers. I know dudes that hustle the cousins all dealing with brothers, but we're just the victims of the ones that love us. Please, don't judge us. You see, we only wanted acceptance. So as adolescents, we felt fast the familiar faults and all the foul perception. We thought drugs would get us paid, and we prayed pistols protect us. You see, a lot of us know no other life than the life lived by others before us, so we run in circles to any feeling of fortune while being mindlessly moved by the minor materials, mainly because, as kids, we used to think it's important. Shoot, I remember feeling the drug dealer supporter. Dude drove me to school. He bought me the Jordans. He taught me money over everything. The dollar's important. We were conditioned to see that working the job's hard, but the older dudes got checks for unemployment. And no matter what, we never trust any member of the law's enforcement. They never had nothing for us. We just see him take family from us. No matter how hard we beg him to, he's just a victim of the ones that love him. No matter how hard we beg him to, please, don't judge him. See, they don't understand. This all started as babies. Bottles and Pampers. We were the sons of fathers just absent, and some followed examples. If her mother had a husband that was abusive, she may not know what love is. It's a vicious cycle, and so many of us get caught in its clutches, and so many of us will soon have kids that are destined to suffer, and it hurts. Looking in the eyes of those kids, their heart's destiny touches. Standing at the back of a squad car when they arrest them and cuff them. Fresh out of frying pan into an oven, the heat on 400. We're raising a fire that aids our destruction. We're raising a world where it's all of us nothing. We're raised by mothers who always wanted marriage, but you see, they never could trust them. They were always victims of the ones that love them, but please, don't judge them. Don't call our women products of the projects that fall beyond that. A palm on my chest, my hand with my heart, and I swear to God we try. It's just that the reality of the world fed us is a lie, and the only way we can live is to fight for our lives in a cold, cold world. Where we see rap songs raise our sons. Jerry Springer and Moria fathered our girls. And the judicial system, well, you see, they allow a judge to slam a gavel and say a verdict that takes a dad from a son to decide he don't deserve, and it's wild. The court system is purposely pick a person that picks out and points the fingers at people as if they're worthless. Beneath the surface, they pattern themselves as perfect. I promise these prosecutors are put in places to hurt us. And it's clear they see we are relevant. Where a sex offender get a slap on the wrist, but a 17-year-old black kid get hit with the time they hit Mandela with. To say we're treated equal, you're insulting my intelligence. Now I apologize to my family for my incarceration. I spent 8 years gone, 8 years long, and I was wrong. I tried to explain that I succumbed to circumstances far beyond my knowledge's reach, resulting in my actions extending the distance further than my understanding could see. Back against the wall, suffocated under circumstances, and y'all, I need the money to eat. But thinking about it leaves this sour taste in my mouth. Because now making it out may have been more probable than previously perceived, but in moments of stress, reflex overpowers contemplation and situations deceive. So hindsight doesn't accurately express what I momentarily believed. It was back against the wall, suffocated under circumstances, and y'all, I needed money to breathe. I'm just grateful that I had a family that still loved me. I'm even more grateful that they prayed to a Lord above me in a world so ugly, and I'm just asking y'all to do the same. Please, don't judge me. Peace. I did 8 years on gun charges at the age of 20. This next poem is the first 3 weeks of me being home and the mental things you go through. Just returning to society after a time so long that some of my friends came up and thought I was dead. They heard I died. And I just popped up out of nowhere. But this is called Go There. I was struggling, really struggling. You see, dealing with the return to society from incarceration is complicated. I even had difficulty engaging in casual conversation. I used to hear there's reluctance in my eyes, and I gave off this vibe of frustration. You see, anxiety weighs heavy. I used to deal with it often. Institutionalization, the enemy. The fight against it, exhausting. Keep in mind, I was gone before Twitter and Instagram, back when Michael Jackson was alive and Bush was in office. Coming home, it can be hard to relate or hard to find place, and even harder to keep pace. Simple things as a man get difficult, like imagine trying to date. Especially if she feels like you're vulnerable and your position allows you to be easily molded or shaped. Or she feels your embrace can take shape when peace to pass the poke from her heart, she feels some obligation to replace. Or what if you too have been through it? And since they have suffered, they feel you had an obligation to be mates. It's crazy when you consider that often the kind-hearted fall victim to obligations they create. See, I never won any bond based off no charity case, and I ain't gonna try to force love where love obviously ain't. I can't promise to provide the energy a relationship requires if I feel like I can't. I have so many demons I gotta face, and it just wouldn't be fair. I said, I have so many demons I gotta face, and I don't think you wanna go there. I don't think you want to go there because if we go there, we got to go where I was projected and predicted to be another statistic. I'm the oldest of 3 kids, 1 sister, 1 brother, the son of 2 fellas, a figure, the reflection of my father and mother, raised by 1 parent when daddy departed, leaving a woman and her kids off East 22nd, Columbus, Ohio, single bedroom apartment, couple sheets and a blanket on a mattress on the carpet. They tell us home is where the heart is, but what about when home is ours? And I don't know why my father departed and did what he did. As doctors delivered his kid, he did without a care, regardless of how desperate we live. But the effect of this is a kid on the edge who didn't care. A kid in a position where both robber and victim were terribly scared. But that's a whole other form, and we ain't finna go there. We're not going to go there because I don't think I can go there. I don't even know if I know how. See, society has brought harm to my heart, and reality has hollowed it out. So as a poet, I seem calm and composed, but inside, I'm hollering out like maybe I do need love, but I ain't never known love to think it's a route. So I travel about, bitter and beaten, marked and scarred, and suffocated under the weight of my own shortcomings. I just struggle for air. Now I'm opposed to those that want to be there out of fear my self-destruction will bring hurt to those that honestly care. I'm a victim of a pain that out of love I don't share, and I've been here my whole life praying none of y'all got to go there, you see. They tell me to look at the bigger picture. What doesn't seem wrong, but the problem with the bigger picture is not fully developed. And the frame wasn't built too strong. So when they tried to post it to show it, it couldn't hold it. It collapsed and folded. So now that image is falling. So as far as what the future holds, y'all, I can't call. I just know why I write what I write and I spit what I share. I know what it feels like to wear your heart on your sleeve and bear all your fears. I know what it feels like to feel like this entire world doesn't care because I've been where I've been, y'all. And I'm just glad none of y'all gotta go there. Peace. Thank you. I'm Paine.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you. Thank you all of you. Those were just, incredibly inspiring. Good afternoon. My name is Meena, Malik. I am the newest member to join the ACI Board of Directors. I'm the program manager of theater at the New England Foundation for the Arts, and I'm also a touring artist myself. It has been an inspiring 2 days for me here at the summit, and hearing and learning about different ways of how people are working towards bringing equity to the field. I believe that the one way that we can dismantle these systemic issues is through hearing each other's stories and educating ourselves, and then changing the way that we contribute to the systemic inequities ourselves. So I want to take this moment to thank all the artists and the panelists who came and shared their stories, their words, their art. We just really appreciate your courage and your willingness to be here. So thank you all. After today, I am re-energized to continue this journey, both as an arts administrator and also an artist. So, we are closing this Saturday event with a Fireside Keynote chat, and I am thrilled to introduce to you the amazing folks who will be participating in it. So I'm gonna read their bios. So, first off, Pawlet Brookes is the founder, CEO, and artistic director of Serendipity, a diversity-led based arts organization coordinating Let's Dance International Frontiers, an annual dance festival, and Black History Month Leicester. Serendipity's initiatives range from continued professional development opportunities, publications, producing diverse dance and theater, supporting emerging artists and arts leaders, and heritage projects. Pawlet has over 25 years' experience as a cultural leader behind the development of Black art centers in the UK, alongside national projects such as the Cultural Olympiad, and as a consultant for the Common Cause project led by the University of Bristol. So, let's next off, Cuyler is an associate professor of arts administration at Florida State University in the Department of Art Education. His research on arts management internships and creative justice issues in the cultural sector appears in highly regarded academic journals, and he is a frequent presenter at major conferences nationally and internationally. As a member of the AAAE Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force, he helped develop initiatives that aim to create a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive workforce in arts administration. Dr. Cuyler is also a member of the Brokering Intercultural Exchange Network, which explores the role of cultural managers as intercultural brokers in the context of globalization. Let's put our hands together. Chadria Labouvier is a writer, activist, and Basquiat scholar. She is the curator of the upcoming exhibition, Basquiat's Debasement, The Untold Story, opening at the Guggenheim June 21st. Her work has been published in Dazed, Harper's Bazaar, New York Magazine, and Elle.com, where she was a contributing writer from 2014 to 2016. A co-founder of Mothers Against Police Brutality, Chadria was the curator and co-organizer of the 2016 exhibition and programming at Williams College Museum of Art, Defacement, Ambivalence, Identity, and Black Lives Matter. Let's put our hands together. And Aysha Upchurch, the dancing diplomat, is a dancer, instructor, and education consultant committed to youth advocacy, social justice, and transformative education. Whether on stage or in the classroom, hip-hop and movement are embedded in her approach as she creates, facilitates, and designs experiences for necessary and liberatory conversations, spoken or embodied. She's on faculty at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, where she's teaching new courses on hip-hop education and embodied learning, as well as launching Hip Hop Lab, a collaborative lab for high school and graduate students to experience, explore, and experiment with hip-hop arts and education. Let's put our hands together for her. Lastly, Jennifer Bailey, our very own ACI board member, who is the moderator today, is a professor at Babson College focused on entrepreneurship, creative innovation, and ideation processes. So, let's put our hands together for all of them and enjoy.
Thank you, Meena. Thank you, Meyer. Thank you, ACI. Thank you, friends and family, for being here. What do you get when you put a dancer, a curator, an academic, a publisher, and a festival organizer together? Well, you get the future. That's what you get. So we're just hoping to in song in response to the question. So just be prepared for anything with this esteemed group. And so we know one thing we've learned about equity is that we don't have the privilege of defining anyone. We allow people to define themselves. And so I'll just start by asking an opening question to Pawlet. And Pawlet, in your own words, who are you?
Who am I? I would say that I am an administrator, and I got there by default in that I started out as wanting to dance. I got taught to dance by my father, but the opportunities to dance were very far and few for me growing up. You could have a G-string up your backside and tassels on your tits, but that would be about as far as it went. Still having a passion to work in the arts, I pursued a career as an administrator, and within that got frustration. And so now, who am I? I say that, yes, I'm an administrator, I'm a producer, I'm an educator, I'm an activist, and I'm an archivist in terms of the work that I currently do. Because I think having that holistic approach, where one thing feeds the other, is the best way of describing me. So a number of different things.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Adrian, who are you?
Hello. I would say there are so many different iterations at times that I feel that I occupy, but fundamentally, I'm a writer. It's how I process the world. It's the defining and foundational practice and vision that appears in whatever it is that I'm doing. And so whether that's curating or organizing or actually writing, it's really being channeled through that. So I would say that writer.
Ms. Antonio, we'll probably say women first. We're about equity here. So humans first. How about who are you?
Yeah, that's when the song will come up. Who am I? In my current position, I am a professor. So that suggests that I'm an academic, but I got there by being an artist. I was a musician. I studied opera. I sang gospel, and I'm a researcher. I'm an educator. But the thing that I care most about is creative justice, which really is a manifestation of all people living creative and expressive lives on their own terms. And so I am an agent of creative justice.
Thank you. Very powerful. Challenging all of us already. Aysha, I'm afraid to ask, because we know your personality, but I'm going to risk it. Aysha, who are you? All right.
Maybe I'm not kidding. So I have a thing that I like to say, so I'm going to just say it. I'm a seed planter and a soil agitator, and I am dope. I am dismantling oppression and pushing education. I do that as an artist, as a dancer, as a choreographer, as an educator in various spaces, K-12, higher ed. I do that because I just was born that way. I am curious and I am passionate, and that is who I am. And I am sitting down, though I do feel like everybody could do just a quick shake out. Right? So just where you are, just shake it out. Yeah, Okay, that's all I wanted to do.
Thank you. No, we are about shaking it up. And so we just want to make sure we're shaking in the right places, so to speak. So I'm curious, if we're going to shake it up, ladies and gentlemen, I'd love to hear your perspective on where we start, because there's a lot of work to be done. So from where you sit, from the work you're doing, help us to understand a little bit about what your day looks like. What are the things that are occupying your mind? And within that, if you were to define equity in the arts, what is the critical challenge that you see in the work that you're doing today? So help us to just understand a little bit of what that work is. We're able to fully grasp the breadth and depth of your work from the bio. So help us understand what your day-to-day looks like in the work that you're doing. And as you do that work, what's the critical challenge with respect to equity? Pawlet, perhaps we can start with you. What is the critical challenge that you're seeing in the work?
What is the critical challenge? Well, funding always remains a challenge. So there is always funding. Sorry. Funding always remains a challenge, but I think the challenge really is about how we perceive ourselves. So although, and who controls us. So for me, there's a relationship with what I call the parent, and the parent is the funder. And so as a diverse organisation, we want to appeal to the funder and do what the funder wants rather than what we want. So the challenge is really to be yourself, and that's it. Challenge to be yourself.
Who do you want to pick up, perhaps?
So to repeat the question, it's the fundamental.
What does your day look like? What is work you're doing?
What does
my
my day look like? My day is full of challenges in terms of what it is that we're trying to do. We're located within inside of the university, but we're independent within that university. And trying to maintain your independence and have your own vision and voice is not easy. So for me, my day is that I am the centre stage. I am the main thing. I don't see myself on the margins of anything. Not interested in taking that space, not interested in being part of that space, but always trying to be put in that space of being marginal, of being on the outskirts and trying to get into the centre. We are the centre in terms of what we do. And so, my day is a constant battle. Want to keep the funding, but also looking at how we're funded. So I think that we need to be commercial, and I also think that we're entitled in terms of what we should get in terms of subsidy. And so it's taking what your entitlement is, and also the challenge of making sure that you can look at the commercial opportunities. It is dealing with the institution of the university. It is dealing with the institution of the funding system. It is dealing with all these different institutions to put forward another perspective in terms of black arts and culture. So every day there is frustration, but there is fun, because I think you need to enjoy what you're doing. And every day we're trying to break down some of the barriers that we are continually faced with. So my day ranges from 1 minute I'll be doing some stuff on the digital archive, next I'll be curating part of the project, then I might be in the studio with a dancer, and also I edit all the publications that we produce. So it's quite a full and complex day.
So my day-to-day is never the same. Sometimes I work from the Diplomat's offices, which if anyone knows me, knows that I am not necessarily an institutional person. So it's very different to, be in the system, so to speak. And so some days I'm working from there, working from home, or doing studio visits, but a lot of what I'm doing is literal excavation. As popular as Basquiat and Keith Haring are, the scholarship is anemic, and a lot of the work that I've had to do for those exhibitions is original research, new research that has been extremely demanding. And just from being able to, even for wall text, I have to do original research because the research is not there. So as that relates to quality and equity, I think a big part of that question and thinking about Basquiat in particular is how people consume him, how he engages with the market, how behemoths engage with Basquiat, whether that's an institution, whether that's the gallery market system, and thinking about the ways in which now that larger museums are recognizing that for decades, and in some cases centuries, where they've been operating from is not actually the center, but the periphery. And now that interest in, the interest is moving towards a center that's founded very resolutely in blackness. what happens when you have gatekeepers at these institutions that have been trained and institutionalized in a way in which they know absolutely nothing about blackness. It's not their training, it's not their vision, it's not an interest, it's not the way in which one lives. How then are they entrusted to tell these stories? And are they willing or capable to move out of the way to either make room for the people who are qualified to do this work, where the resource is going to come from to train people to do this work, not just, not in the sense of, okay, we're going to hire a Black curator or a Latinx curator just because they are these identities. I mean, is the rigor there, is the scholarship there, and, what is this going to cost in terms of all sorts of resources to make sure that these artists, not just Basquiat, but an entire canon, are getting the respect and dignity and rigor that they deserve.
Aysha, can you just tell us exactly what you do? We know you're doing something about hip hop and Harvard, which typically don't go together. Tell us what you're doing, how you got there, and what are the critical challenges you're still seeing in the work?
Great. But first, a pop quiz, because I'm going to challenge that. What hip hop magazine was founded at Harvard?
What?
Wow. The Source. So hip hop and Harvard have been homies for a minute, but what is qualified as peripheral or like history that gets to be ignored because it is Harvard and all of its 1636ness. It's like, but still people show up in spaces, right? The Source magazine was started there by some students in 1988. So there you go, participatory panel time. And beyond that, the Hip Hop Archive was founded by Marcelina Morgan, and she started it in Stanford, and when she came to Harvard, she brought it there. So there has been a history of hip hop in Harvard, which is not necessarily exceptional, because hip hop is everywhere. So there's also that. And so hip hop has been part of my human living history. I found it on my porch in St. Louis in the 80s. I feel like that's where you meet hip hop, for real. But now we can meet it in the academy. But why that's important is because as in the sector of education, we use language like formal education and informal education. And I purposely don't try to buy into that, because I think actually some of the most formative learning that has stuck with me, that has actually been helpful, happened on the block, in the neighborhood, in those community settings that were intergenerational. No offense to anybody who's like a math whiz, like my sister's one, I don't know if we're related all the time. The advanced AP calculus hasn't come to the fight. But my ability to know how to sit in circles and communal spaces and ciphers, my ability to sit in intergenerational spaces, to learn with young people, to let that language that is happening and transacting for all of us through hip hop is something that has been quite telling. And so that is the work behind the Hip Hop Education Lab that I started. It's called Hip Hop X, and it's EX to see like what does it mean to have a laboratory experience where high school students and graduate students who are studying education, radical idea to have people studying education in spaces with young people. Shots fired, take them how you need them. But the idea is to see what happens when we are pivoting. What do we mean by teaching and learning by centering it off of hip hop, which is a shared experience. We got on the train at different points. I don't know a lot about these mumble rappers, but I get to sit in the seat of learning from the young people. We had a beautiful exploration happen off of just studying the message by Grandmaster Flash that opened up into all of these amazing personal stories being shared, and young people offering. Schools don't care about us, so we don't care about schools, but where there is care, there is learning. We know that has been documented over and over again. So hip hop is the access of letting care be at the forefront. And so that's kind of the idea behind the Hip Hop Education Lab, and just, shameless use of this space. If you all are around on Saturday, April 6th, we're having a free conference at Harvard, young people and adult people leading and jamming out together. Because I have this also radical, but it's so simple notion looked different? What if it had nothing to do with brick and mortar buildings that are decaying anyway? What if it had to do about just shared culture, learning from each other, vibing off and creating together? Might something radical and dope happen?
With respect to, do you have a definition of equity? And as you're doing
Sure.
And if you do work, what's your critical challenge that you see?
Right, I remember those questions. Also daily, boring days, just all over the city, boring, no days the same. Equity, I was just sharing that, like, I think if you ask me this question in a month, I might have a slightly clearer definition, but I think equity is a verb more than this noun that we are fixated with sometimes. Like, we know the image, equity versus equality, the three people at the fence and the crates. Sometimes we Google it later, it's fine. And so I think a lot of times it's like we're trying to get somewhere, but the other side of that is we actually do not know what it's like to live in an equitable society. And so I think it's important to be driven by images and ideas of what it means, but I like to think about the work of it as very verb, it is action, it is nuanced, it is joyful, it is messy, it is showing up every day, it is it meeting you even if you didn't ask for it because it's Sunday and you want to sleep in, but you get that email and there it is. And so I think equity is like work, and it's also going, where am I in this? How many crates am I standing on? And am I willing to acknowledge that I might be standing on more than the person next to me? And why is it easier for me to point out what they got and not where am I? What have I internalized that is also oppressive messaging? So I think that's the verb of it. It's like this constant action of like reflecting. I think the challenge as far as the sector that I'm in is thinking about who's at the table. Again, I'll just go back to the idea of the lab is anybody focused on education reform who doesn't have the space for young people at the table, you're lying. You just flat out, it's not gonna work. And I think that in conversations with young people, that's some of the most important learning that I get. And so that's the opportunity I think we face is to go, can we keep radically collaborating? Can we keep, maybe by invitation, maybe by a little force, shifting some chairs at the table so that those who need to be there to push the proverbial needle are there? Or are we really actually having just a siloed conversation where choir and choir leaders just say the same things over and over again?
Thank you. Nice lead into, Antonio, you have an interesting kind of articulation of equity as creative justice. Tell us a little bit more about that definition and what is the greatest injustice, creative injustice that you've seen in the work you're doing?
Okay, so to me, equity is different from equality in that equality, everybody gets the same thing, right? Even if you might need something different to be successful. So equity actually is an assessment of what people need to be successful, what intervention they need to be successful. And you have to actually ask them, what intervention do you need to be successful, or something like it. So it also acknowledges that marginalized and oppressed groups of people will need different things to be successful. Women, in general, need very different things to be successful than cisgender men, right? But if you truncate women, if you look at women of color versus trans women, women of all types, you have to actually ask them what they need to be successful. That's what equity is. Equity is only one part of creative justice, though. So if we were to actually achieve the manifestation of all people living creative and expressive lives on their own terms, it's going to take access, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Not just equity. Equity is only one piece of it. There are 4 pillars of it. You need all 4 pillars to be successful. The 4 pillars suggest different strategies and different approaches. And if you wanted to break it down and be, very, very specific, for example, when it comes to access and diversity, women in the arts management workforce, that's why I'm an arts administration professor, they're overrepresented. And they're overrepresented because about 77% of the arts management workforce is female, right? So in terms of access and diversity, we've done it, right? But we still have a lot of work to do when it comes to equity and inclusion. Are women paid the same as their male counterparts for doing the same work, right? Are the policies inclusive enough so that women don't have to decide whether they're going to have a family or a career? And so it's a very big philosophy or way of thinking. And to pinpoint one creative injustice, I don't think that's fair.
Okay.
I could give you a list, right? Like, it's highly problematic that 90 to 95% of all of Africa's cultural products exist in Europe. Like, is that not weird? Like, if we went and took, you know, the Mona Lisa or some of the other cultural products that Europeans really value and hoarded them in Africa, they wouldn't like that. Yeah, would they? You know, they wouldn't let that go down. So why is it okay that we've done that? And so then we're getting into these discussions about repatriating art, right? Where the French president, he commissioned this report to try to start having that conversation. And you have, I'm sorry, Shay, but the museum and the arts market, they're saying, well, but we don't want to give it back, essentially. You know, how do you establish provenance and who it really belongs to? Well, you took it from those people, just give it back. I mean, really, like, just give it back.
Right. So you raise an interesting point on that last note, that these things will not be freely given. Everything included in access, very, very kindly returned. So in the work, let's talk about the action and the activism. We have to go take it. Let's say that. What does that look like, Pawlet? What is that taking back?
Well, it's all, because this is a lot of the American model for me versus the UK model. And we're funded very differently. We're funded through the Arts Council England. And you have 4-year funding rounds. And to get into that is hard work. And it's a thing called, you become a national portfolio organisation. And there's about 900. And if I look at the sector that I'm in partly within that, it's dance. And of those 964 of those 900 is dance. Of those 64, 12 of them are diversity. Of those 12 that are diversity, 4 are African Caribbean. And of those 4, only 2 are female-led. And so you start to look at what does equity look like and what does access look like and what have we really got. And so what we have to do is then, I am in for guerrilla tactics and guerrilla marketing and guerrilla ways of getting things done. You just have to take over and take centre stage and take it back for yourself. So if you get a rejection, you know, you put the application back in within a week. Then you get another rejection and you put it back in, and then you take the second rejection and you say, well, actually you just rejected me even though I fit all the criteria, and you start to challenge it because you've got nothing to lose. You've got absolutely nothing to lose to putting it out to the press, doing whatever. What have you got to lose? Because you haven't got anything in the first place. You know, you just need to take that back, that control. It also, for me, is about changing the model. Changing the model of the parent, you know, and looking at that model and having a different approach to it, and saying that actually we are entrepreneurial, we are a business, and looking at that business case as well. So you have to have a clear business case alongside taking what you're entitled to. And the business model is really, really important. If we look at, for me, coming from a Caribbean background, and we look at Carnival, Carnival used to get all its money from being very, very entrepreneurial and from lots of different sources. Now everyone else is taking those different sources and Carnival's dying on its arse, and we've got no money coming in. We need to take back that centre stage. We need to create different models, and we need to also open up the landscape so we can see what has gone before. So the whole thing about the archivings and research. So we're doing all these different things simultaneously. This is where you help me get some out of the back. Yeah. So take a book out. And so what we're doing is we're not just doing putting on a dance festival. We're also, you know, writing for ourselves. All our publications have got black writers in it. All our publications are owned by the artist, by you, not by me. It's not the Pawlet Brookes book. These are your voices, and we need to punctuate what has already gone before. So we open up that ground, so it's given a different dialogue, a different voice, and so our voices are in it. Our voices are missing from the conversation. If you put it on the internet, it's gone in 5 years. So we need to find other ways of making sure that we're in that we're part of that. So for me, I suppose I'm always a bit of an activist. I talk about my guerrilla style of doing things. It is really, and it's a thing that I talked to the panel about before, it's about being confident but not being arrogant, because there's a fine line between the two. But actually instilling that confidence where we can take back and control and write and talk, passionately and positively about our work, and not go just thinking that there's a begging bowl. Because once we went with the begging bowl, we actually lost a lot of stuff as well. We didn't gain as much as we thought.
Thank you. Well, we know that you're an arts lover and a fighter. I think your personal discussions will see the fighter side of you. When you're fighting the good fight of arts equity, what have you found at a personal institution level to be a successful one for that fight? When you're fighting, what works well for you?
So, wait, is the question like, what does it reflect that?
When you're fighting the good fight of art equity, what are good weapons? What have been the most successful weapons of war for you in the fight for arts equity?
She had told us some things.
Yes, I'm not sure how much I can go on the record. Go ahead. What are you feel at liberty to share? Maybe from artists that you've studied, how have they gone in the fight?
Well, I think kind of thinking about Basquiat and sort of in myself sort of separately maneuvering through institutions. I think that you have to really, really know who you are, because I think when you're engaging with institutions that are virulently white and have invested in that identity and have weaponized their resources to protect that position, no matter whether you're an artist, whether you're a curator, whether you are even a museum goer, you have to really know who you are, because you're going to get messaging and visuals that just are not who you are, and just not accurate. And so in terms of being able to fight that big fight, I shared earlier, I think that it really behooves, people of color who are engaging administratively with museums that maybe have one foot in, one foot out, whatever that looks like, to be able to have distance so that there's room to move. Because I think, just very frankly, we're talking about, and this is not necessarily just the Guggenheim, we're talking about institutions, museums, peer institutions in a way that have been deeply white for a very long time, decades, centuries. And to say that they're not violent is just not accurate. No one would believe me if I said that. And no one would believe me if I sat here and said, no, the Guggenheim is not violent. So I think that I think that that's both insulting to me and what people know about the history and the times that we're in, and also the history of these museums. So that being said, I think that being able to have a relationship and a distance where you can both say the truth but maneuver with the art, bring the artist in, but also recognize that even though we're having these conversations about changing the boards, changing curatorial rooms, what does it look like, for, the Whitney or moment to curate, we also have to acknowledge that some of these institutions may be so toxic that it is just not healthy for people of color to be there in-house. And so what can we do to make sure that it is safe for people of color or other marginalized people to be in these institutions full time?
That's right. Here's when we look at other industries, for-profit industry, corporate, the education, academia. Are we ahead? And we're all kind of working on this issue of equity. Are we in the arts industry ahead of the curve with
take that one. I think that we are a reflection of the society that we exist in. So I don't know that we're behind, ahead, or at the same place. I think that's the most honest answer that I can give. And I think people in the cultural sector, some of them have fooled themselves into thinking that because we're connected to culture and we're practicing artists and we're connected to our humanity in these exceptional ways that we have transcended racism, sexism, heterosexism, ableism, all of the isms, that we have not. And I think, it's a blind spot for us if we don't be honest with ourselves and grapple with the fact that we are a reflection of the society in which we exist. Now, because we're so close to our humanity, we can use our humanity as a way to lead society if we are to be more honest about that.
But let me ask you a specific question.
Okay.
So when I look at media, and I compare the last 15 years, I've seen a shift, and a very clear shift, right? In terms of my own being able to see myself reflected in the media. Why does that happen? But why is it that when I go into a museum to reflect in source that shall remain unnamed, I see dead white people? Why is that? Why is media and the for-profit industry able to make that shift? Or even when I go into a boardroom, right? I see myself more reflected there. When I turn on my TV, I see myself reflected in those instances. When I go into a museum, I do not see myself. So I would argue we're lagging, and I'm curious, what's the difference? Why can't we get there? What's the problem?
So capitalism, I think, is the reason why it looks like there's been some change in certain sectors, right?
Okay.
Money is, that's why you have like Blackish and you have Fresh Off the Boat, and all of these shows that we didn't have before. The Black Panther, that movie. Like why 2018? That movie could have been made so much earlier. And the thing is, the for-profit and the non-profit industries both exist in a capitalist society. I think that the white supremacy that is kind of the root of the non-profit structure has prevented more progress in terms of what we can see. Because 46% of museums boards are white. That is very true. And so until we can figure out a way to make it so that there are financial repercussions for not being more reflective of the actual society in which we exist, it's going to keep moving slower.
Okay, so we have a fundamental challenge here, which is you're saying that in some degrees, in the for-profit industry, we can take advantage of the fact that the audience, the buying power is diverse, and so we can leverage that to move the needle forward. So we're kind of in a little bit of a conundrum here, ladies and gentlemen, because we're in a vicious cycle, right? Because the audience and the venues don't have a diverse audience, then what's the incentive? There's no incentive. So this is where the creative potential of this group will really come to the fore. So we got to fix it, and I'd like you to fix it now. So, right. So tell me what is the most creative, entrepreneurial, innovative approach you see either in your work or in a peer's work that has really shifted the needle. What have you seen that's disrupted this industry so far that we could look to as potentials for the future world that we live in? No pressure.
Yeah. Part of me is just gonna ignore that whole fix it now. That's pressure.
Fix it, actually, fix it.
Well, I'm magical and I'm real at the same time. So, there's that. Okay, so coming from the education world, I think there are some things that are happening that are exciting and also could be, I just think, indicative of what I personally think should happen is that the school structures that we have, as we know, they need a simultaneous internal disruption and dismantling, and we also need folks who are working on the outside. Like this, Sean Wright always says that we're so ready to disrupt and dismantle, but if we don't have people who have the competencies and the wherewithal to rebuild so that we don't replicate what we've been internally making script, then we just did all of that for a big fat zero, nothing. So I like to point to a couple examples, especially at the crossroads of hip hop and ed. So there's the High School for Recording Arts in Minneapolis. Anybody in the know? Okay, and also they opened a campus in LA this past year, and that is every student has an individualized learning plan. And so thinking about how an education where if students have IEPs, there's a bit of that individual attention, even though some schools drop the ball, but a whole school that's going, hey, you might actually know what you and how you learn, and we're going to put entrepreneurship also in the mix of this as hip hop as a pivot, because I think one of the opportunities and what that school is a model for me is like, let's not forget that artists and arts organizations are businesses. Like I think we, as a sector, arts world, however you want to follow that, like have to really challenge ourselves about this anti-business mindset we are accidentally kind of upholding. Like if you can't take care of your pocket and know how to speak that language and know how to see how that fits with another, like folks that you're interacting with, and then I don't know how far that's going to go from you. And so to know that there's a school where there's financial literacy and entrepreneurship written into it, I think that is in a way pipelining people to be in leadership of arts organizations better than what we have now. Because we have a big opportunity shift, I say, with a lot of baby boomers retiring from leadership in arts orgs, we might be able to disrupt the statistics of predominantly white female leadership and boards that are still very, very white. But if our young people don't know the business mindedness, and if they are still struck by, oh my God, museums are where all the dead white people go, because that's what I suffer from, then they're not looking to step into that. They don't understand that that's a place where they belong. And so I think that like in education, when you have schools there's a school in Colorado that's starting where the students were also involved with the hiring of the board, and one young lady who I met, she's 15, she said, if you want to be a board member, you actually have to come into the building. You can't be this in absentia, like, fictitious person. That's a 15-year-old, okay? I'm trying to say young people are so hip and so knowledgeable, so they're designing a school with young people's input. That's going to impact when people and how people are entering this quote-unquote job sector, what that means. So I just want to highlight that. That's not going to be a light switch. I mean, I think there's nothing been more well-developed than the plan and the business structure of white supremacy. Like, they didn't leave any corner untouched. Like, hetero-patriarchal, able white supremacy was like, we got every nook and cranny of this. And that took time. So I also want to say, like, there's going to be no microwave answer. And it's work. It is a verb over time. So I think education, how we think of schooling, and what we put on the table and what is centered, hopefully not Eurocentric modes of teaching or learning, I think that's going to be critical. And there are models popping up more and more. So that keeps me hopeful.
And Tony, you mentioned some innovation around funding models that you've seen that have been particularly successful. Can you share some of those with us?
Okay, so one of the things that I appreciate about what the museum field in the U.S. did was first they got the Mellon Foundation to fund this diversity in art museum study in 2015. And so, because sometimes people like to pretend like, what you're saying isn't the truth, so until you do a report or some kind of survey or some research and you actually show that what you were saying actually was the truth, then they're like, oh, we're not diverse. I went to that one conference and talked to black people, but that was anecdotal, right? So, then what they did was they got the Mellon and the Walton Family Foundation to give $4 million to support, or $6 million, to support an initiative to start developing these programs across the country to diversify art museum staff and curators. And then, just this year, they announced a $4 million initiative between the Ford, Mellon, and Walton Family Foundation to fund this board diversity and inclusion effort. Because they realized, okay, so what if all of our initiatives work and there's this, group of, this critical mass of diverse professionals who could go work in museums, but the boards don't want to hire them. So I really like that they're thinking about it from a systems thinking approach, and they're thinking about all the systems that they will need to dismantle to actually become more diverse.
Thank you. Gabrielle, any innovative models that you've seen that have been particularly successful?
I think I know this is coming. What I said earlier that it's always kind of weird to me that I'm in institutions. It's because when I'm speaking on researching Basquiat and Keith Haring on my own, I was an undergrad at one of the top college for art history for undergrads, which is Williams College. And I kind of went into college knowing what I wanted to study, but Basquiat, Keith Haring, Francesco Clemente, the artists of the 80s, just was not on the curriculum. So I began studying these artists on my own, and one of my entry mates from college is here, and he can vouch for that. And so I didn't know what it would be, and so coming from TV in a way, and my graduate work is in television, TV is a numbers game in a lot of ways. It's about, do you have an audience or not, very point blank. And I think that the kind of this golden age of Black and Black content and content of people of color is because, in the early 2010s, people were creating web series and showing, even if they could not, even if these things didn't go to pilot, that there is an entire market out there that studios were totally ignoring. And so kind of coming from that training and understanding that it's about proving, do you have an audience or not, I kind of took that and applied it to the museum, or to the art world. And so what I did was, before this went to the Guggenheim, this started out as a digital project. And I've taken the website down since then because it's just harder to protect the integrity of the work. And I think when you're dealing just the realities of dealing with an artist like Basquiat, the intellectual land grab is rapacious, and and for me, where my work intersects with not just Basquiat, Keith Haring, but Andy Warhol, Picasso, I think that the art world at the blue chip level is just like a different beast in a lot of ways. So it's just to say that with a digital project, I partnered with Williams to do a one painting exhibition of this painting, and we did programming, and I taught a class. And that was a strategic decision in a lot of ways. One, I personally wanted to bring Basquiat back to Williams, but also I knew that this would, where it was positioned, would have the eyes and ears of the art world in a sense. And I could show that, one, there was a need to engage with Basquiat critically, and there was an audience for that. And I think it kind of went from there.
Thank you. And last but not least, Pawlet, your model, I think, is the most audacious. Because you've taken on the entire arts value chain in the work that you do. Can you talk to us about why you pursued that model, what are some of the particular successes you've seen with that model, and just any of the insights that you've drawn from?
I suppose the need for the models, when I sit here listening to you guys talk about museums, we've only just acknowledged that we have museums, in terms of it being a place for Black people in the UK. I talk about the funding system, and Aysha laughed when I said, 75% of it goes to the Royals, the Royal Opera House, the Royal this, the Royal whatever. And the rest of the money is divvied up between absolutely everything within the arts. And museums have gone into the arts in terms of how the structures have changed recently. So if you then start to look at diversity within that, and if you then break it down by culture in terms of heritage, there's not a lot. So, where do we go and find our heritage when we look at museums? So, doing the project Archiving the Past, Reflecting the Future meant that we needed to find somewhere where we could put it out there. So the publications are that, the digital archive reset is that, and then challenging the institutions and trying to break down doors, make sure that our work is not just located on the internet, but in the British Library, so you know that it's there. So because our work will get lost. But so the only way, I think, is making the connections between the different parts of the work. And we started out as a regional project, and more people keep saying to us that we're national. We're more international than we are regional. And making strategic partnerships and having those friends internationally is the way, because then it's about collectively working together. So the books that we have produced are not just about Black British art, it is about the diaspora. So you find the voices in there, voices and people that you'll know from the US. but then you'll find people in there from Guadeloupe, from Martinique, you know, from Rwanda, from what, they are the voices of the diaspora, because we need to pull together. And it's with some of those voices, because people respect things more when it's come from abroad. You don't respect stuff when it's on your own ground. They just don't, for whatever reason. It doesn't really matter, that's the way it seems to work. But when you've got that weight coming from somewhere else, that they go, oh, and they really respect that, that really helps us. So it's important to join up those dots and work together. And I think in terms of the model that we're doing, we've joined it up on a very local level in terms of the heritage, the education and the arts, but we've also tried to join it up on that international level because we are diaspora, and so it makes perfect sense to me to be working with people in Africa, we're working with people in the Caribbean, so we're working with people in the States.
It is a global war, that's what I heard. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you've been challenged and inspired, and please give it up for our creative warriors.
Thank you all so much for sharing today with one another. We would now like to welcome you into the main lobby area for the best hour of the day, happy hour. And before we do that, I just want to recognize a couple of, well, some really important housekeeping too. So 2 things. One, we have these lovely little drink tickets. So first drink is on us. The people that you can grab these from are Tamiko, right here, Joy, right here, Allegra, right here, and I've got a stack too, so please come say hi. There are also soft beverages as well as beer and wine, so whatever your flavor, we got you. And then I also would like to take a second for us to just recognize the co-hosts of the happy hour. Again, looking at our partners that are doing really incredible work and wanting to make sure that we recognize them. So we have Aysha from WOCA, Women of Color in the Arts. We have Audrey from the Network of and Malik. Hey. The 3 of you for co-hosting, tri-hosting, quad-hosting this happy hour. We hope it is happy. We hope you are full of joy and celebrity after today, and we look forward to meeting you all for brunch tomorrow morning. Pajamas are completely welcome. Thank you.